I think that if they'd never existed, we would be better off. At the turn of the century, in the tens, teens, early 1900s, 19 teens, there was an increasing anxiety about Black people and immigrants in the United States. A resurgence of nativism and racism. And these Confederate monuments were erected, I think, for manifold purposes. But they have a very similar history to the one that is in our town. Funded by white people who want to make a stand or to evidence to outsiders, but particularly to Black populations who maybe were encroaching. So it doesn't surprise me that Quakertown was such a self-sufficient economic community. That poses a significant threat to white communities.
That monument was built in 1918 by a women's group called the Daughters of the Confederacy. And during from about 1918 to 1922, there was actually an increased presence of the Ku Klux Klan in Denton. And, so to me, it's a very ominous aspect of the history that is important to acknowledge, because it's not difficult then to understand why this entire community would, be forced to kind of relocate, considering that the Klan was present in Denton.
So these monuments, in my perception, served as a function to sort of carve out white space. This is our territory, and I want the Black people here to know that. But then I think it also so it had a terrorist function, definitely. Additionally, so which is sort of can't be uncoupled from white people claiming their own space.
Also, I think it's interesting to put those pieces together, because oftentimes we kind of want to condense historical timelines, right? We think about the Civil War, the end of the Civil War, we have Reconstruction, we have Jim Crow, right? But Quakertown was established for 50 years, right? Between the time it was founded and the time that it was essentially disintegrated, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence at all that the Klan shows up in Denton and we have this kind of shift in who's making these decisions and in the kind of ominous nature of that.
Something that's been interesting me is not so much the history of these monuments, but our present engagement with them. The fact that many of them are erected not that long ago, but people still conceive of them as being part of our history. They have a classical design, many of them, which make them appear to be much older than they are.
You hear the argument often presented about Confederate monuments that this is just preserving history and honoring soldiers that fought for the country. And people try to disconnect that, right, from anything dealing with racism or oppression. But once you put that into context with something like Quakertown, especially for Denton, we can understand how it's not divorced from those larger issues, that it's actually right there in the center. It's like a symbolic representation of a larger problem.
Well, what conversation are we meant to have about it, right? That would justify its being in my face. So I think that their complete and total removal is required in order to have those conversations at all.
So the Denton County Historical Commission, right, just voted last week, in fact, to relocate our Confederate monument off of the square. So I think it really shows that we're still kind of coming to terms with this aspect of our past as a city, and the ways that that's still impacting our understanding of who we are as a community now. But I think that we are trying to kind of come to terms with what's happened in the past now, rather than kind of brushing it under the rug, right? Which is why it's so important that people are doing more research